Welcome everyone to our June Business Bites. I hope everyone is having a fantastic Wednesday so far. And I'm very excited to see everyone who's joining us today for this fantastic panel discussion. For those of you who may not know, my name is Colin Sommerhauser. I'm the head of HanaHaus in Palo Alto. And as a quick background, Business Bites is a collaborative virtual series hosted by On Its Axis and HanaHaus. If you're not familiar, On Its Axis is an innovation consulting firm based in Southern California. And HanaHaus is a flexible co-working space and cafe with locations in both Palo Alto and Newport Beach. Now, unfortunately, our HanaHaus workspace has been closed during this pandemic, but we have continued to operate virtually and provide many insightful events every month, including Business Bites. Good news is HanaHaus is on the verge of reopening very soon. We are about to announce our return date in the next week or so. So I'm super excited about that. It's been over a year since we've been open. So keep your eyes peeled for that announcement. You can follow our social media channels. And we cannot wait to welcome guests back into our space when that time comes. Now, today, I do encourage you all to use the chat feature at the bottom of the screen to ask questions and engage throughout the session. And maybe as a quick starter, for those of you just showing up, you can go in there and comment where you're tuning in from. We always love to see where our audience members are coming from. And just as a quick last reminder, the session is being recorded and we will be posting it on our YouTube channel after this is over. And we will also send it out via email in the next week or so. We'll also provide a survey at the end just to get some feedback from you to improve our future sessions. So please do fill that out if you get a chance. And with that, I would like to hand it back over to our amazing moderator, Kelly from On Its Axis, to welcome our panelists today.
Thank you so much, Colin, and thank you to everybody for joining. Today's session, Hiring for Innovation, the Increasing Demand for Innovation Talent, is one I'm particularly excited to be kicking off. We'll begin by giving our panelists the opportunity to introduce themselves to all of you. So starting with you, Rick, the first question, can you please introduce yourself? Tell us a bit about your background and the work that you do.
Sure. So my name is Rick Girard. I have been in executive search for a long time, primarily in Silicon Valley. I cut my teeth in building tech firms within the very competitive software industry. I'm also the host of the Higher Power radio show and podcast, and I've just released a new book, which is called Healing Career Wounds, which is a startup guide to helping entrepreneurs systematize their hiring and win the strongest hires.
Thanks so much, Rick. I'm really looking forward to your perspective on today's panel. And Lauren, really looking forward to hearing from you as well. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, the work that you do?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here. My name is Lauren Jones. I'm the founder of Leap Consulting Solutions. I've been in the staffing and recruiting industry for 23 years and have spent about the better part of the last decade really focused on all the technology that supports our industry. And my firm focuses on three specific areas: expeditious acquisition of technology, business process change management, and then evangelization of the technology that supports your firm.
Thank you so much, Lauren. And Anna, certainly not last and least, I'm really thrilled to have you joining our panel as well. Can you tell us a bit about yourself and a bit about the work you do?
Sure. Thanks, Kelly, and thank you for inviting me to this panel. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So I've been in HR for about 18 years now, and currently I'm working as the head of people and culture for a data technology company, and really focusing on how to drive business through its people, one of its most important assets. So talking about not only talent acquisition, but how do we retain and ensure that we're creating an environment that creates positive success for our people and for our business.
Thank you so much, Anna. For those of you in the audience and those listening in later on the recorded session, hopefully you'll see that our panelists bring tremendous expertise, both from their career expertise, but also coming from different perspectives and backgrounds, both in-house and consulting to the industry. Really looking forward to today's conversation. We'll go through a few structured questions around hiring for innovation, and then we'll leave it as an opportunity for those who are on today's live session to also ask some live questions at the end of today's talk. So that said, Lauren, I'm going to come to you first, and I'm going to ask the very first question, which is, what is innovation talent?
Oh my goodness, I love that you asked me first. That's amazing. I think we were just talking about that. No, all kidding aside. Here's what I think. While that term is not one that I hear all the time, what I do hear all the time is the need for people to be comfortable in the innovation space. Meaning, I need to come to the table ready, willing, and able to adapt and overcome and change. I think innovative talent are those that are flexible, mindful, creative. And I love the fact that you've got large employers sort of dropping these traditional technical degrees, really looking for a creative mind. So when I think of innovative talent, I think of diversity and representation and all of those things when I think, in innovation talent, because our entire industry, we're in a human industry, right? Human capital industry. And it's being led with technology in many spaces right now. And that is going to require innovativeness and innovative talent to make sure that we honor the relationships and the people and all of those things. That's going to take innovation talent to achieve.
Lauren, thank you so much for being an example of innovation talent. As you and I were talking just ahead of the start of today's conversation, you said, please don't ask me this first, and I jumped straight to you. What an amazing example of resilience and change agility, and what a great perspective. Anna, I'm going to come to you. I'm going to ask you the same question. What is innovation talent to you?
So similar to Lauren, this is, the first time I actually heard this phrase this way. But when I think about innovation, it's really about disruption and people who could come in and think about what they're currently doing and doing it in a different way. And I think this year, more than any other year, is a year where innovation is probably on the forefront or on top of mind for a lot of executives, because this is a year where those companies that were able to take their talent and make them work in a different way, have them do what they've been doing successfully and do it in a different environment and still have that success, I think really has shown that innovation or that agility, that disruption. So for me, that's when I think about innovation, is that disruptive mindset. People who could come in and think about what they've been doing successfully and how can I do it a different way and still have that same success.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I love how your responses complement each other. And Rick, as I come to you, I'm really looking forward to hearing your perspective on this question as well.
Look, I'm the same way as the other two. Like, I haven't really heard of that term before, but I've always placed innovative talent. So I guess in a way, it's always been there. I mean, to me, innovative talent or innovation talent is basically the people that every small company needs to build the company. You need to hire game changers. You need people that that think differently outside the box, that can bring diversity and bring other perspective to the table and drive change. And that's really, to me, what innovation talent. And I think where the challenge lies in a lot of companies looking for innovative talent is that they need these type of people, but they also need to empower them to be able to drive the change.
What a wonderful transition as we begin to think about our next question for all of our panelists. And Anna, I'm going to come to you with this one first. As our panelists representing working internally for an organization, why do you believe today's employers are increasingly seeking innovators for their teams? You talked about innovation talent as potentially disruptive, and I'm really looking forward to hearing how you respond to this one.
Yeah. So in prepping for this conversation, I was trying to look up some statistics, and I found somewhere that CEOs as innovation as a priority for a company increased by 10% over the last year because of COVID. And definitely aligns because of what we had to do over the last year, and a lot of companies changing the way they do work. So that definitely makes sense to me that that executives are focusing on innovation. And how do I get innovation to be a part of the mindset of our teams? So for me, it's the importance, I think, started being driven by the technology and advances of technology and just needing different things from our employees. It's no longer those employees who have specific skill sets who can drive a process per se. It's those employees who can problem solve, those employees who can bring that cognitive ability to have collaboration and to have mindset diversity, who can then bring new ideas to the table. And I think that's why we're focusing on innovation so much more, because we have technology in place that has really come into play and helped streamline a lot of processes that before we needed employees to focus on. So now the focus is in extremely different areas. And this is going to continue to become widely important for executives, especially as we've seen technology advances just in the last year when it comes to how we do work. And all these new things we're going to start seeing because of what we'd experienced over the last year. So I think this is going to be definitely a conversation that's going to continue to be highly important for a lot of executives. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Anna. Rick, I'm going to come to you. I see you nodding along. I'd love to hear your perspective on this.
Well, I just feel like if you don't innovate, you're not going to grow, and somebody else will, and they'll take a big piece of your business from you. I mean, Uber is set out to prove that. So many companies have come and disrupted established markets because they were sleeping. And then once they got past them, then they kind of, their businesses crumbled, right? So innovation, I think, is important to spur within the organization because you really want to elevate that level of performance and continue growth for your people. And if people are being innovative and they're being challenged and they feel like there's somewhere to grow to, they're going to stick around and they're going to contribute much more effectively to the business. And yeah, I mean, you've got to do it with long-term growth in mind. If you don't innovate, you're not going to continually grow your organization. And I just feel like there's way too many companies right now that are just focusing on that short-term satisfaction. And those are the ones that are going to end up crumbling and dying.
Thank you, Rick. Lauren, as I come to you, we've heard Anna talking about the role that COVID and change agility has played on innovation. And she echoed what you had shared about the role, an increasing role of technology related to innovation. And we heard Rick talk about the risk of companies not innovating and not attracting innovation talent. As I turn this question to you, why do you believe employers are seeking innovators for their teams?
Well, I wholeheartedly agree with Rick here. It's like innovate or die. And as the resident technologist, and I'll say it like that, right? As the resident sort of technologist, look at just what happened over the course of the last year. You had a 524% increase in investment in communication tools. You had a 160% increase in the acquisition of video interviewing technology. We have massive digital transformations that occurred in 2020 because they were required to. And I feel like 2020 just acted as an accelerant to what had to happen to fuel a fire of, and particularly in the talent acquisition space, we tend to be a little bit laggardly in innovation and communication. We are very slow to adopt, and part of that is because there is this human component where we feel like, oh my goodness, if we put technology in the middle, we're not honoring that. And what I think people are starting to realize, that now we are very comfortable talking with each other and creating relationships. I have year-long partnerships with people I have never met face to face. And we have sort of validated that we can do it. And so now companies are looking for people that are going to help them continue the momentum, continue to innovate so that we can continue to scale, see organizations grow, and so on and so forth ad infinitum. So, you know, I just think it is now a requirement of doing business.
Absolutely. Innovate or die, as we
innovate or die, right? Put that on a t-shirt.
Amazing.
I'll have them made up next week and I'll send it.
I love it. Innovate or die with like skull and crossbones, right?
I love it. Let's do it. We'll start
a new trend.
Rick, I love this. I'm coming to you as we set the tone with Innovate or Die. What advice would you provide to the company that's interested in attracting innovation talent, as somebody who's innovating the career and hiring process, really interested in hearing from you and kind of digging in on what you said earlier about the failure in the process, right? It's not just attracting the talent, but also creating the space for them. So what advice do you have?
Yeah, I feel like you always have to start with yourself first. Is leadership really innovative? Are they really buying in? And there's a lot of people that have this idea they want to be innovative, but really it's not who they are. So again, hopefully nobody cuts in on your sandwich there, but you know, if you're not that, you should become that. You should learn how to become innovative and how to empower your people to be innovative, right? That's the biggest challenge that I've seen, is that, you know, people want to do certain things, but they don't put the actions forth or the systems in place in order for people to come on and be successful in that venue. And then I always drill it back to company values, right? You know, that should be one of your company values. And if it is, then have a operating system or a hiring operating system that allows you to be able to attract people who will thrive within that value system. You know, that eliminates things like bias and other things that make you not hire people. But, you know, if people are in alignment with your core values of your company and they bring the right skills, they get it, they want it, and they have the capacity to do the work, then they're going to thrive. And so you have to set the environment to make sure that people are going to be innovative. They're going to be empowered to make that change and drive that change.
Thank you.
And every idea should be an idea that should be heard. There's no bad ideas.
So these themes of inclusion and listening and communication. And Lauren, as I come to you, I would love to hear your advice as you're thinking about sharing advice, not just to the companies themselves who are interested, but to your peers who are consulting with these companies. What advice would you share with the companies or your peer consultants about attracting innovation talent?
I think Rick was 100% spot on. And that's, you have to represent it if you're going to say you do it. And that's diversity, equity, and inclusion. You know, if your senior executives are all middle-aged white men, sorry, but you know, if they're all that, right, then we don't have what we need from the top down, right? And so you're 100% right in that, you know, if you want to attract innovation talent, you have to be innovative, and you have to represent innovation, and that means inclusion, and that means providing an experience for that talent that comes on that is unique and creative. You know, it is the ultimate mirror, I think. When you are looking for something very, very specific, and yet you don't represent that at all, you know, I don't feel like those two things can live together. You have to represent what you're looking for in order to, it's the law of attraction.
Mm-hmm. That's great insight. I love this concept of representing what you're looking for, and that self-reflection as part of the process of attracting talent, I think, is really important. So Anna, as I transition to you, if you could share with your leadership team one piece of advice on how to attract innovation talent, or your peers in other enterprise organizations, what would it be?
Yeah, so it's along the same lines. And one of the things that we've been focusing on is our brand. Who are we as a company, and how do we represent that externally? And are we identifying that way internally? Because our employees are going to be our biggest brand ambassadors. They're going to be, when you talk about a great recruiting strategy, is create these brand ambassadors who are going to be able to speak to our innovation. What are we doing as a company to be innovative, and how do we attract our top talent that way? But that means you have to do the work internally. You have to create, same to what Rick and Lauren would say, you have to create the space. You have to ensure that if you're saying you're an innovative company, you've created opportunities for people to have learning opportunities. I don't like to call them mistakes. Are you creating space for them to have learning opportunities where they can then build and grow and create, build their new ideas? So a lot of, for me, when we talk about hiring top talent, you do have to first start internally, and have you created the space where you can keep that top talent? Because you can probably bring them in the door by improving some processes from a recruiting standpoint, but will you keep them? More importantly, can you keep them? So it definitely will start internally. And what environment have you created to ensure that you can keep innovative talent? Yeah.
Well, and I think that's a great point, Anna, because you do have to be able to keep the talent. And if you're an organization that isn't, I don't know if you guys have seen that LinkedIn banner that says, looking for graphic designer, and it's written in like crayon on the billboard, right? Clearly there is a need. And I think being able to, so I don't want to turn away companies that, haven't been able to innovate. And I don't want companies to think that if they haven't been innovative up into this point, they can't attract innovation talent. It's really being able to demonstrate A, the need, but B, a supportive environment that will that's inclusive of retention, and making sure that you can create that environment where they can thrive.
Right.
Can I add one thing?
Absolutely, Rick. Absolutely.
I was going to say, like, really, to be truly innovative too, you need to embrace failure, and you have to have an organization, and from the top down, where like it's okay to fail, and you should celebrate your failures, because it just gets you that much closer to a success, right? So as an organization, you have to be really willing to embrace failure and be okay with it.
Yeah. So I like the point, Lauren, that you made, because I do think it's a mindset shift, right? If you're not being innovative now, what can you change with the way you think? To Rick's point, embracing failure. So identify those things that you can change, the environment and the way you think about innovation. And start bringing in that talent that way, and start helping them develop out that organization. But it starts with that mindset shift. Yeah.
So there's hope for you, companies.
Yes.
One thing that I really love in this conversation is that we didn't intentionally create a path for how we talked about innovation, right? We started with this very obtuse concept of innovation talent, and yet the conversation is talking about the need for innovation to not just be externally focused, not just be thinking about innovating the product, or thinking about or framing the problem that the company is solving in a different way. But it's also looking at innovation in terms of internal process change, in terms of internal culture change, and the kind of escalating pace of the demand for that innovation within the workforce. And I love the synchronicity of all of your responses around that there's this need not just to think about that customer experience, but also to think about that employee experience through the process, and rewarding that innovation behavior. And so, Lauren, as I come to you with our next question, I really want to kind of shift gears and frame this to the job seeker. We've been talking a lot about the company experience, but there is also this need for this employee experience, for the person who's being innovated. I know in the work that I do and that my team does, We're often brought into an organization that's been trying to work on innovation, and they've hit a point of failure where they're saying something's not working in our innovation process. We keep acquiring companies we think will innovate our brand, and it's not yielding the results we want, or we're attracting talent and we can't retain them. So if we flip that conversation and we talk to the job seeker who's interviewing with a company that emphasizes the demand for innovation skills, how would you ask that job seeker both to frame how they present themselves to the company, but also to evaluate that company? Because I think it is a dual exchange.
I totally agree with you. And so as I put my, 23 years of recruiting experience on, I have some very, very firm opinions about how a job seeker represents themselves appropriately to a customer or to a client or to a company. And the company A needs to be able to quantify what innovation means. So a candidate was set up for success to be able to articulate or demonstrate, their skills in any category, right? But I feel I have this really sort of woo-woo mentality about resumes. So it's a CV, it's curriculum vitae, it's course of life. It's my course of life, not your course of life. And the one thing I tell candidates is that they need to be able to articulate and validate their course, be able to tell a company why they've maybe had movement, or if there's a specific skill set that a company is looking for, validate that. You validate that through experience, you validate that through references, and you validate that through asking really pointed questions. And so if innovation in that very broad bucket that we've been talking about today is something that a company is looking for, the first question I would have a job seeker ask is, tell me your definition of innovation, and I'll tell you whether or not I've got it. And so, I think it's, bringing those two things together and understanding, if there really is a love connection, because that's, we're really matchmaking here. And that takes a little bit of work on the side of the job seeker to make sure that they really have their UVP, their unique value proposition down, and they have their course down, and any disruption in that course is you can articulate. And then again, additional skills that might be required, we have to be able to have some prepared questions and some prepared answers.
Thank you so much, Lauren. Anna, I'm going to come to you asking exactly the same question from that employer perspective. What's one tip you could offer to a job seeker?
So it's really, it's along the same lines. And I think Lauren mentioned this earlier, that, the days of looking at someone who's has a degree in a specific area, and, that's the route that they went in and they were very focused. Those days are coming to kind of not to an end, but kind of a mesh, right? Now we're realizing as an employer is it really that degree that is most important to me, or is it that experience? And how can a candidate talk through their transferable skill sets? Because of technologies jumping in and handling on some of these processes and things that before I needed someone who had a specific degree and to handle, I have technology who can help me with that. Now, what are those things that I'm looking for from a candidate that a machine can't give me? And how have what you've experienced in your previous roles, whether they were within the same industry or even the same function, how do those transfer to the role that you are applying for? And can you articulate that for me? And it's really being able to tell your story and why your unique background can add to what we need in our teams. And that's really the way we look at candidates and try to look at it. Again, for a company that's hiring for diversity, they're going to be wanting to find those experiences that are different than what they currently have on their team. So those being able to speak to those experiences and those transferable skill sets, I think is very important. Yeah.
A great point, Anna. Innovation is not a synonym for technology.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We have to get that like super clear right now. And that's your technologist who's like this super nerd. I look at a technology a day, keeps my doctor away. I mean, I am obsessed with this stuff, and innovation does not equate to technology. It could be a new process, a new idea, a new way of doing things, new way of looking at things, restructuring things. It could be a million different things. That is such a good point.
I love that. It doesn't play nearly as well on a t-shirt, technology or that, right?
Longer t-shirts.
Are we trying to get more t-shirts? Is that what we're doing? We ought to think of a
table runners now.
Right?
Absolutely.
Well, send me loose on this. I'll start ordering t-shirts. It's not a good idea.
I have the table runner.
Rick, I'm sending this question your way. One tip to a job seeker who's interviewing with a company emphasizing the demand for innovation skills.
Okay, so, first and foremost, I really think it comes down to positioning and understanding exactly what it is that you want to do. So don't just look for a job, target what it is, like sit on a rock, meditate, figure out what it is you really want to do and where you're gonna thrive, right? And look for companies that align with that. Like if, one of the biggest complaints I get from people that I talk to is that they're not able to grow. I had somebody tell me that in order for them to grow, somebody had to die at their company in order for them to get promoted, right? Like, so there wasn't a whole lot of growth for that person. So if that's important to you, now focus in on things that are going to bring you to that point where you're going to grow. Try to target just a few companies and develop relationships. Anna's not going to like this, but develop relationships with people who might be on your team, right? Use the power of LinkedIn and reach out to people and say, hey, look, I'd like to find out more about your company. Let's, do coffee or something like that. But get to know people and get referred in. Anna might like this because employee referrals are usually the easiest hires, right?
Yep.
So if you come in through a referral, put yourself in a position to come in through a referral as opposed to, going the traditional route. Anybody who's in HR or screening a bunch of resumes, they're overwhelmed with people. So somebody who comes in a different route, gives you a little bit of an edge up. And it's also showing that you're innovative because you're going a different route.
Yeah. I love that tip. I do really like that idea. Employee referrals are the best. I mean, I talked about brand, right?
About that.
No, I'm not sending you any high net.
People to go over my head.
No, I love it. I mean, our employees are the ones who are going to be working with all these candidates, right? Is it technically the HR team or is it going to be those employees? And if I have an employee that says, hey, this person reached out to me, I got to know them, I think they'd be a great fit. They're going to add value. They can, bring different mindsets and ideas. Yeah, bring them on board. For me, that's the best type of hire.
Absolutely. And the thing is, like we've mentioned, I think Lauren mentioned a resume earlier. I think I hate resumes. I'm sorry. Like, I think they're the biggest waste of.
Another t-shirt.
Yeah. I mean,
invented in 1482. Can we move beyond them, people?
Yeah, the most valuable content on a resume is the contact information and the white space in my mind, right? And so if we can get past having to use that piece of paper that is really a screening tool, then you're putting yourself in a much stronger position to find the right opportunity for yourself.
This is a powerful, powerful conversation, and it's moving way too quickly. We did have a question come in through the chat. And so just before we open it up broadly to chat questions, I'm going to go ahead and share that one with each of you and give you each an opportunity to answer in on this one. There have been several discussion points around the concept of embracing failure. A phrase my team uses internally is fail forward. And the question is, can you give an example of embracing failure? Does anybody want to take a crack at that one?
Oh my goodness. Well, I've had a lot of practice at it.
I can give you an example of what we did on our sales team. So we used to, during our sales calls, our team would only share their successes. So what went really well this quarter, right? And that's their focus 100%. And sometime last year, we had a new sales manager come in and said, I want to start with what didn't work. What are those deals that didn't work? And what is your opinion on why they didn't work? Where did it fall apart? And they would share among the team how they believe that could have gone better. And it's made a world of difference. And for me, that's definitely embracing failure. You're talking through it as a team. You're giving it high visibility that something didn't work out, and you're collaborating with your coworkers to figure out how to make it better the next time. So it made a huge difference among our sales team when they started doing that.
Transparency is everything, right? And you need to be able to see the failure, and that's why, if you're implementing a new technology, right? How are you going to measure if this technology is making an impact? And you need to be able to answer that question in order to get the goodness out of it. But we had a couple of best practices. We had a lost opportunity review every week. And so we named it nice, right? Lost opportunity. It was really everything that went sideways, right? But we looked at lost opportunity every week, and we looked at why. Was it competition? Was it rate? Was it not moving fast enough? What was it, so that we could sharpen our tool on how to fix that? Or if you were, I have typically, if I'm running a stack with a firm, we have a report card for all of the vendors to determine, are we right side in our investment with that technology? So I think the first thing is you have to be able to measure the failure to determine if you're going to be able to learn from it. And then you have to be just as deliberate about the failures or missed opportunities as you are about the wins.
It's a great perspective. Rick, I see you nodding. Do you want to weigh in on this one?
Yeah, I mean, this was actually a hard one for me to implement, because just both personally and getting my people to buy into. So we starting out level 10 meetings with me talking about my failure. And it took a while to get other people comfortable with doing that, because I wasn't really a failure kind of embracing guy for a while. But after a couple of weeks, then it started becoming fun. Like, everybody wanted to hear it. And it doesn't matter what failure it was. It didn't necessarily have to be a business failure. I mean, I talked one time about how I was getting out of my car, I stepped on my shoelace and I tripped and fell into the bushes. That was my failure for the day. But that's, it kind of opened up, and it actually, again, made everything transparent, and it made it so easy for people it made it safe for people to fail. And when they do fail, then I saw an increase in production, and it became a lot more collaborative, a lot more communicative, and the value as an organization just, went through leaps and bounds. It did so much better. So
I love this concept of failing forward. I love the different perspectives on it in this group, right? The retrospective, looking at what didn't work and trying to take lessons from it as we think about what didn't work, but just the very act of creating space for it and acknowledging that failure is part of the process of winning is a differentiator. And in allowing for people to have room as part of their performance metric, room as part of their objectives and key results, or however you're measuring performance, to safely try, which is another key concept we embrace in our organization as a safe to try space. And I think that when we create room for that with people, we create room for people to challenge assumptions about what's working, and we create space for new opportunities to be found, and we redefine what winning looks like. And I love that concept. So, right, getting rid of resumes is a great example of that. How does an organization evaluate talent more inclusively? Well, one way is to stop using resumes as a screening service. And that may open up your opportunity around what type of talent you're willing to have a conversation with. So that's one example. A question from our audience, I think, that plays really nicely into this conversation is, what are your views on the cover letter? Do we include them with applications? What to include with cover letters? Do we just abandon them altogether like resumes? What does that look like for all of us?
Oh, okay. So I'll go first on this one, because I don't know that I've met a recruiter that uses them or reads them or leverages them. The only time I see them really used is that those very first jobs, where you really need to fresh out of school, high school jobs, the very, very inexperienced workforce, because there does need to be a presentation of, this is why I'm applying. This is my resume doesn't reflect this, but here's being able to speak. It's essentially, if you look at it, it's like the individual writing their submittal, right? A traditional submittal, what a recruiter would typically present to a customer. And if they're done right for those more inexperienced candidates, it can really kind of piece it all together. Beyond that, I have no words.
I think it's a waste of time. Don't put together a cover letter. I'm going to even say, don't even do a resume. Just like take your time and get to know people within the organization. So we started cutting out of our process. We didn't ask for a resume anymore. What we did was we put in our job descriptions two things: performance metrics on what somebody's going to accomplish in the first 90 days, rather than the skills. And then the second thing is a call to action in which we have them answer 3 questions that are kind of just simple, but they give us insight as to who this person is. And we evaluate them more on their call to action and that response than we do on anything else. We tell them, you're welcome to send a resume. We're not going to read a cover letter, so don't bother. Just answer these questions. And the ones who answer them are usually the ones who are bought in and they're interested in the organization. And we promise that if they put some thought into it and respond, we'll give them a phone call and talk to them.
Great.
I think what I want to encourage businesses to do is just have conversations.
Yes, absolutely.
We've gotten so far away where, the algorithm needs to read the resume and keywords and, just pick up the phone.
There's so many good people that are lost because of that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And we have all of these acceleration tools, VoIP and, all of these things to make picking up the phone and chatting. I still think chatting is a really meaningful way to have a one-on-one with somebody while they're in job seeking mode. But we have to stop screening out and start screening in.
Yeah. Look, some of the best people have the worst resumes and the worst profiles.
People suck at talking about themselves, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But I feel, and I think that, and I've said this before. I'll say it till I'm blue in the face. Looking for a job sucks, and we forget that so often, and we do not lead with empathy. Looking for a job is seeking out acceptance from strangers, and that is not an easy position to be in.
No.
And leading your organization and your technology, because I believe you can acquire and implement technology in an empathetic, branded and meaningful way for a candidate to have a great experience. And there's no reason to not lead with empathy. Looking for a job stinks.
100% agree with you.
I want to come to Anna on this one because I think it's a slightly different perspective when you're internal to an organization. And so would love your thoughts on weighing in on the cover letter and sort of the broader conversation we're having. And then I'm going to follow it up with a question specifically for you, Anna.
Sure. So I'll start by saying I'm going to probably steal some of Rick's idea there because I would love to get rid of the resume process. I have this conversation with our hiring managers all the time about how we're so focused on the perfect candidate on paper that we're not focused on those candidates who can bring that diversity that we continue to say we want to bring to the team. So one of the things that we've done internally is creating a really solid recruiting intake process where we try to deep dive into what the hiring manager is really looking for. Not that degree, not that, supposed expertise in a specific program, but what really are you looking for from a candidate to try to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish? And it's really understanding what's your definition of success for somebody coming in the first 30, 60, 90 days? Where do you want them to be a year from now? so that when we do have those conversations, we can really talk to a candidate and really evaluate whether that candidate's going to be able to be successful in our company. So I agree 100%. I don't have the answer to how to get rid of resumes. I think that's just we're still in that kind of era where I'm not quite sure how I would fill that in, with my team. Would that be, yeah, how would I do that? So that's kind of what's rolling through my head. I know we've been making changes slowly to try to get there, where we're encouraging just having more conversations from our team and having that initial get to know people, to really evaluate and not just lean on the resume. So we've made more progress there, but we also have a lean team. So I think that's where a lot of organizations internally struggle, is it does take time to be able to do that. And how do I do that with my team and not just lean on the resume? So we're kind of in that influx on how do we get to, that perfect situation where we can talk to almost every candidate and not just lean on that one piece of paper. We're not quite there yet, but it was a mindset shift from our hiring managers as well. Where, we would get 100 resumes and we'd only talk to 20 people, and we'd be like, how is that even possible? There's no way you could only talk to 20 people out of 100 resumes. We're making progress now. Our hiring team is definitely a lot busier, because we're having more conversations and kind of looking outside the box, we'll say. But it still starts with that piece of paper, and we haven't figured out how to move away from it.
Well, that right there is a systemic, that's one of the systemic issues, is we put out a job.
Yeah.
We put out a job posting with ad infinitum, with no limitations, right? Yep. We have one job posting with one opening, and we leave it up for the traditional 30-day time period.
Right.
You get 65% of your applicants in the first 7 days of a posting. Now it's even leaning towards like the first 72 hours is when you get the meat of your applicants. And I think I was one of the first to go to the career builders and the monsters, when they were big. And I was like, dude, I don't need a 30-day job posting, for the love of God. Can I turn it off after 7 hours? And that's where programmatic came in. And that's where technology can help you sort of fix some of that's where innovation can come in and fix some of these systemic issues of, I have a job posting out there for an inordinate period of time that's contributing to the fact that I can't keep up with the applicant inflow. Now, if I had a smart job posting that went out for a specific period of time and reached its limit of applicants, and then I was thoughtfully able to go through those applicants, wouldn't that be a much more meaningful experience for everybody involved, right?
Yep.
And there were more targeted candidates. Yeah. Absolutely. I don't know. I stopped using job boards a long time ago. I hate them with a passion. So.
Well, I think one of the things that we've heard consistently through this conversation is that we're in a state of evolution in the job hiring process, in the employee experience process. And so, Nika, thank you for such a thoughtful question on cover letters. I think what Lauren shared about them playing a strategic role at certain phases of your career is true. I'll also speak to the nonprofit and educational sectors where they continue to be necessary. So there are still some roles, and it could be that those organizations haven't evolved or innovated their process quickly enough, or that they still perceive a value in them. And so it largely depends on what stage of your career you're in, and also your career pursuit. Because if you intend to be a professor at a university, please plan to write a lot of cover letters. So keeping that in mind, we're looking at innovation happening not just as a monolith. Innovation is, by its nature, change and diversity. And so it's different based on industry. It's different based on career stage. And so, Anna, I'm going to come to you because you said something so interesting based on the industry you serve. And a question that came in specific for you is that you mentioned that you're in AI and data for company, but you've also mentioned that there's an increasing focus on hiring for kind of cognitive skill, what we might sometimes refer to as a soft skill, though you didn't use that language. How does that play in within the setting of an organization that needs some hard skills to accomplish very specific technical tasks.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to that focus of what you're hiring for, right? There's going to be those, when we think about leadership and building up those leaders or those innovative leaders that we need for the organization, when we go out and hire for that talent, we're going to want to really focus on that and focus on those soft skills that we're trying to accomplish, right? So I think within the organization itself, there might be some mixture of what you're looking for, and it goes back to that diversity. What skill sets are you trying to gain from your team so that you're finding that right balance of those technical experts who are going to be able to build that product or that new or be able to drive that product or that customer request for data, versus those people who might not be the innovative team or might not be that. So you probably have a balance of two. I know we do in our team, right? There is those people who handle the technical expertise and are trying to drive our development. And then there's those people who are also driving the R&D portion of our business, and right, and where are we going from there? So we're very specific, but I still believe that even in that technical expertise, having those people who have at least that openness to innovation and that mindset will also help improve what they're contributing even from a technical standpoint, because they're going to be wanting to continue learning their expertise and continue growing within their own functional areas and building upon that technical knowledge that they have. So you're still looking for that mindset and that drive to want to continue learning and growing. I think that will be a straight line skill set that you're looking for across an organization.
Thank you, Anna. If there are any additional audience questions, now will be the time. Add them in the chat for us, and we'll be sure to round out our opportunity to ask them. If there aren't any additional questions, I'm going to give each of the panelists an opportunity to share any final thoughts before I hand it back over to Colin to wrap us up for the day. So Rick, I'll come to you. Final thoughts since we started with you.
Oh gosh, I have so many. So just in general, I mean, if you're a company that's looking to hire, innovative talent, I think you should eliminate all the hurdles that you put in place in order, and like to Lauren's point, you should talk to people. You should talk to everybody who applies. You should talk to people who kind of put in the effort and stop screening people out based on a resume. A resume is not innovative. So stop using it if you can, right? And when you have those conversations, figure out whether or not people bring something to the table of value that you share, and you can provide value back to them as well. I found that it's not really, there's a shortage of people right now. There's a shortage of really good people, and everybody's hiring, still looking for great people. And the problem is that nobody's hopping ship unless there's something in it for them. And so, turn away from that internal view of I need this, I need that, and look at how am I going to add value to you as a person first, and then you'll attract the right people to your organization. That's innovative.
I love this. Empathy as innovation. Lauren, with that, I'm coming to you for final thoughts.
Oh, I'm gonna brand that one.
Yeah.
Empathy is innovation. I love that. Well, we've got a couple t-shirts here, right? It's innovate or die. You have to have, and I think innovator or die means we have to have a path forward. When I'm talking about talking to people, talk to them in the medium that they're comfortable talking to you. If it's chat, fantastic. If it's text, great. If it's a good old-fashioned email, us Gen Xers, we just love email, then it's an email. But it's those experiential choices to accelerate and improve conversations from view to apply. Let's minimize that time. From the time I'm seeking a job to the time I get my first paycheck. Let's stop having it be 6 months. Let's stop having it be 60 days. That is what innovation will do. And that is all of that is with empathy in mind, because if we're empathetic to the process and understand that somebody needs to get to work as soon as possible, we'll leverage innovation and technology to make sure that that happens, and it happens in a meaningful way. It'll happen where they're comfortable having it happen, and those experiential choices will wrap it all in a bow, and it will keep people there. Innovation, is not only an accelerant, but it's also a retention tool to make sure that we're taking surveys and we're getting feedback, we're understanding, taking those temperature checks along the way. So let's not confuse innovation with technology, but let's understand that technology isn't the enemy. It's all the impediments we put in the middle.
Thank you, Lauren. Anna, your opportunity to share any final thoughts.
So I think with this conversation, there's definitely, we've identified shortfalls in a process that's been in place for a long time. Shortfalls for just, making time to do some of these, but I think everybody agrees that innovation is definitely something that we should be focusing on, especially internally as a people and culture leader. So I think I would say, focus in one area that you can take and commit to improving and driving towards a direction of innovation. What is that one thing that you can do? Because obviously there's probably a lot of changes you can make internally, and pick what that is, evaluate it, do it, and then continue evaluating, continue improving, and just continue that, and then go to the next phase and the next step. So I think take one thing that you can do and move towards more innovative hiring, and then make that successful. Yeah.
I love that answer. Consistency. That's so important. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity for us to round out today's conversation. I want to thank each of you for your thoughtful responses, for volunteering your time to join our panel and share with our audience. And I want to toss it back over to you, Colin, to wrap things up today. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. And thank you to all of our panelists for taking the time out of your day to speak to our audience about hiring for innovation. This was such an insightful conversation. I think based on the engagement and the questions we had, this was an incredibly valuable session for everyone who tuned in. So I will be dropping the feedback survey into the chat box here in a second. So please feel free to take that if you can right now. That would be very helpful. And our next Business Bites will be coming up in July. So be on the lookout for the registration link in the follow-up email, along with the replay link to this session. And with that, have a great rest of your day. And I look forward to seeing you all next month. Thank you.